Hi. Hi, guys. On today's Cross Talks, we're talking with an amazing person with whom I met in XR Startup Wise Guys program. He's doing an amazing startup. And if you want to skill up, if you want to learn more in VR, then Steve Pinto startup is like way to go. Steve, hi.
Hi, Annie.
Pleased that you are here, and it will be better you to tell us what you are doing and why are you in Startup Wise Guys program right now.
Okay, sure. So I'm running a company called Skillup, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to make training accessible to as many people as we possibly can. We're trying to fix the skills gap around the world and use VR as the medium to do so. So Skillup is a tool that makes it accessible and almost very affordable for anyone around the world to download content and upskill themselves in VR from all different kinds of content. From stuff that they're going to do in the workplace, and just give them the skills that they need to to function in the world.
Actually, very crucial tool for every HR manager, right?
Yeah, it's not sexy, I'll tell you that. My business isn't as sexy as the other stuff I've done, but it's very, very important. And I think, we definitely need more people in the world who have more skills, or we're going to constantly have, more and more problems. I mean, I'll ask you this, like, your parents, do they still work?
Yes, they do.
Okay. If they lost their jobs today, would they be able to get new jobs tomorrow?
Actually, they already lost. So they are doing their own business. So my parents are like kind of
entrepreneurs.
Yeah, entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So I get you.
But yeah, that exactly. Like, this is a challenge I've noticed with a lot of people, is that they don't believe their parents would be able to get other jobs again. And I think it's because they don't feel that their parents have skills to compete in this new world. So we have to be able to build tools to do that, or we're just going to have more and more problems and more unemployed people in the world.
Sure. It's very crucial too. But you mentioned that you were doing many sexy things before. So how you started in immersive technologies? How you started your job?
So I was the first person in South Africa to bring augmented reality to the agency space in about 2012, I think. Yeah, 2012. I went to Germany on a holiday, and I went to the Lego store, and I'd seen the first sort of project that was the first kind of commercially available thing in AR. You could take the Lego box off the shelf and put it in front of the camera and show it, exactly what was happening on top of the box. It was Matteo's, the German company's first foray into doing something in the public space. Mm-hmm. And later that company actually got bought by Apple and became ARKit. But it was the first time that I actually seen that, and my mind was blown. So, what I had done was, as soon as I came back from my holiday, I started an AR business, and I started to build prototypes in the first SDK that was available from Qualcomm, Vuforia, and I started to take it around to all different agencies on my smartphone and just try to show them what AR could be, and people were just blown away by what it was. So, I've been in building AR and VR applications for more than 10 years now, technically. And that's how I got started in the space. I saw something amazing. I, fundamentally believe the technology was there. And, I did my best to take it around town and to do as many projects as people would let me try.
Yeah, 10 years is a lot in augmented reality, and I'm sure you've seen a lot as well. But can you tell me what was the difference between whenever you started augmented reality and at the end of your working years?
Where I am right now.
What type of companies have you seen who were doing augmented reality?
I think that the challenge that we saw from the beginning was the accessibility, right? And it's still exactly the same problem we see today. While everyone has smartphones now that are much more capable of rendering and processing and computer vision, it's always about the app, right? It was always the problem of the application. And in the beginning, in the early stages, you needed a very high-end smartphone, and there was a very small population of people that had it. Now there's, billions of smartphones, and everyone has a smartphone. But then the other barrier is the data, the download, the friction around that. People prioritize space on their phone for pictures, not for apps. right? And the first thing they delete when they need to make space is apps. So, the challenge about distribution in AR has always been about, getting past that initial barrier. We always, talk about it that, that AR will be the phone killer. When you put glasses on your face that you can see the whole world around you in a mixed reality experience, you won't need your smartphone anymore. But, right now where it is that the smartphone is the king of the hill. And the barrier to getting most people to have AR experiences is to download an application of some sort so they can begin the experience. That's pretty much where the barrier has still been, and it's been the same for the last 10 years. 10 years ago, nobody wanted to download an app. 10 years later, people still don't want to download apps. So, this is the sort of the challenge that we constantly experience. But, when you see an application that has a very high utility, the barrier is removed. So, when I talk about that, it's like if you think about Facebook's AR tools that lives inside of Instagram and, in Messenger, you can see that there's less friction. So there's not another app you have to download. Even with Snapchat, it's within Snapchat as a filter. You don't have to download that. When people use it in a commercial sense, to sell items or to visualize spaces or to, use it as a sales tool, downloading is not a problem. So it's always about the utility. If it's a very useful thing, then the barrier to download is kind of negligible. But if it's not a useful thing and it's a hard sell to make, most people aren't interested in downloading the app, and ergo loses the success of it.
Mm-hmm. So as I understood, you mainly were working on applications rather than web-based experiences, right?
I have done web-based experiences. I have done, mobile app experiences. I've even built an AR headset as a prototype, too, in fact. In my days, I've experimented with a lot. Yeah. So I've done all kinds of stuff. And I've even worked on some computer vision examples with some engineers, to try to make AR a little bit more fluid a couple of years ago. But you can't compete with what Apple and with what Google can do with their platforms. So, eventually we kind of stopped doing that. But we've worked on every medium that exists pretty much, from headsets to our own made headsets to mobile devices to web applications as well.
So could you please remember which campaigns were too beneficial for your clients? What type of campaigns you were doing? Were they promotional for brand awareness? What types of marketing objectives they were covering?
So I've done a project with Monster energy drinks, and what they wanted to do is that they wanted to launch the new flavors and new sort of concepts around it, and they wanted to create interesting fun mechanics that they could convert people to making content that they could share or post and forward them on their social channels, and that worked really, really well because it was Facebook Spark AR projects. Very simple idea of just making, different cans and colors and, making, interesting experiences that people needed to place a can in an interesting and odd place. We've also done utility projects where you visualize and you see objects that you want to sell, light fittings that, company manufactures, or we've worked with a robotics company that just wants to show what their robots look like inside of a customer's, premises. And, we've seen that the really successful ones are the ones built around, utility in one sense. When you're building a product visualization tool in AR, it works really well for the sales cycle. When you're trying to build something that's, got a high experience or a game that's attached to it or a mechanic around a social interaction, it's about making a short, concise, quick loading experience that lives in a social channel. So, if it lives in Snapchat, if it lives in Facebook, it has such a higher chance of success and accessibility to much more people. Mm-hmm. So the commercial success is quite clear. We've seen from, say, for example, the energy drink brands, they've seen huge numbers, thousands of daily active users on a filter. And then, on the commercial side, it's much, much lower, but it helps so much more with the sales process that the value is clearly articulated. So, AR isn't necessarily just about the numbers of views, but more about the utility of the project that you're trying to create.
Sure. Let me dive into educational part of the companies. I'm sure you have some pain points on that direction whenever you are explaining some crazy idea that they have to do it to get amazing results, but they are not quite sure about it because they didn't know back then. So how frequently did you face these kind of problems, lack of education?
So I think my biggest problem right in the beginning is that I expected people to be as interested in the technology as I was. So, when I went to a meeting, I was like, I could paint this big picture of what this project could be like. But I, usually spoke over people and they never really understood what I was trying to say because they didn't try all the apps that I did. They didn't try all the websites that I did. They didn't try all the experiences that I did. So they didn't have that initial base of sort of information or experience. So what I instead did, in all my meetings is that I made a game to actually play different experiences, right? So, and I had a narrative that I wanted to kind of convey. So I knew that this brand would particularly want to do something in visualization or wanted to do something in gamified sort of application, or if they wanted to make an experience that, lived in a larger social campaign. So I went and I pulled different references for games and experiences, and I tried to send them links, or I would, load it up on a device in a meeting, make sure everything was prepared and give them a whole experience to take along. I found that the biggest problem was that there's no base level of education. Like people have this expectation of what science fiction and TV tells you that, augmented reality can do. And it's very vastly different from what's actually doable and accessible and meets the deadline and the budgets, right? Which is always the challenge when we're doing this kind of content, is that, it has to be done yesterday and it has to cost nothing. So, firstly, you have to first get people to understand what has been done, what it cost, how long it took. And then from there, you can kind of get them to a point where they understand, what is the potential of the project they're trying to do. So, in each of these, I, specifically designed a bit of a user experience, right? So I took a 10 to 15 minutes out of the meeting and I said, okay, try this, let me show you this, let me show you that. And I did the same thing with VR as well. I made it a point to show you certain things that got you very close to understanding where the technology was. So like, in VR, I show you a cheese plank experience, so you can see, heights, and you can understand that you'd be scared. With an AR application, I would show you something that lived on Facebook in a campaign to give you an idea of how it would translate from, the user experience. Because ultimately, we're users first and customers second, right? So, if we can't give a good user experience, or if I can't show you a good user experience, then it's going to be impossible for me to, close a deal and show you what you could do with your brand. So I always start from a place of showing what's been done before and how well it's been done before. And then, taking people on a journey of ideation where we start to develop a concept that suits your purpose and what you're trying to do and helps to align to your brand's objectives. The last thing that I do, that I never actually do when a client calls me is that I have this great idea for an app. I was like, okay, have you seen it before? No. Okay. Do you know that if it's possible or not? No. Has anyone told you if it's possible or not? No. Have you gotten a cost for this? No. Okay, well then we need to start from the beginning. So let's take it back right to the beginning and let's go through this journey, because 9 out of 10 times the person who calls me on the other side of the phone or sends me the email doesn't have a concept of what's doable, what's not doable, what works, what doesn't work. Just because you have a great idea doesn't mean.
Not even objective, not even.
Yeah.
Like why they are doing.
It's just, I have this big idea. I want to try it. I think it should cost nothing. Let me just waste your time and, talk to you for an hour and a half. So I always try to do that. And even, I have like a copy and paste field with a couple of links to videos on YouTube, because if you don't have a headset, then, I can't show you VR. I put in a couple of links to Facebook or to, it's like apps on the App Store if you're on Android and iOS, and I copy and paste those just so that people can have like a pre-understanding. And I say, okay, I'm more than happy to have a meeting with you. I'll help you with your project, no problem. I'll give you costs, I'll give you an indication, but I need you first to do these 3 things. And that's in the mail, right? So that at least I get them to a point of education before we go down this road, because I want to have a constructive meeting with somebody that actually gets to the problem that they're trying to solve and gives them to understand what's doable and what's not doable in the shortest amount of time possible. And I just have to do that 9 years ago, and I have to do that 9 days ago. It's the same, right? People are all the same, and they all, they have great ideas and they think that it's doable because they saw it on TV in a movie or something. And now they're expecting you to make the magic happen when, most of the time that technology doesn't exist the way that they expect it to.
Yeah, it's true. And numbers are growing. A lot of companies are diving in this direction, but Also, there are some marketing managers who don't quite understand how they can implement augmented reality in their marketing mix. So what would you say to these marketing teams and these managers, why they have to start using augmented reality now?
I think that it's a lot of trial and error, right? Like even the website design today, like it's all about A/B testing, right? It's about testing and breaking and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. And you need to do that. Otherwise, you're never going to get a formula that works well for your business. So, the objective that I would always say to someone when you're starting out on this sort of journey of, playing in AR and VR is to have clear, measurable goals. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to show 10,000 people our product? Are we trying to show 100 people our products? Are we trying to show 10 people our products? Okay, where we start there. Because that depicts the medium to which you use, right? If you want mass scale, you have to use social media platforms and they have their own constraints. If you want to do small scale and higher detail and, more user experience driven stuff, okay, well, then you're going to have to build applications and those have their own limitations. So you must have this sort of, fit of understanding exactly what it is that you're trying to achieve and what's the best medium to do so. And along that way, it's about trial and error. Don't go spend all of your budget on something, not knowing what you're doing, and then be upset that it didn't achieve the results that were never going to come anyway. Rather be more realistic with your targets and, test and break. Test one idea, test another idea. Be iterative, be very dynamic and agile. And you'll start to see the formula that works for you and your business. Just because somebody got high, results on a social AR campaign doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to stick with your brand in your vertical, right? Everyone's different. And AR is just a medium, right? It's like a screen. So it's not about using the screen, it's about what you put on the screen and how people interact with it, right? So just because you have a camera doesn't mean that you're Steven Spielberg and you're going to make an Oscar-winning movie. But everyone has a camera, right? So you have to be cognizant of that, is that there are techniques and tricks that work, and you're only going to get those understandings when you break and you fail and you learn, but you must have an idea of what it is you're trying to achieve before you even get started. Because if you don't do that, then you're never going to know that you actually achieved it or not. So, that's what I always try to tell people, is that, like, don't throw all the money at it. Try something until you see that it works. Then throw all the money at it, because then you're more guaranteed success. But if you just throw money at it, hoping that you're going to get, results, 9 out of 10 times you're going to fail, and then you're going to blame the technology, not your execution of it.
Sure. So augmented reality and VR is quite a long time here, right? But it's quite like futuristic perceptions there, like what VR or AR would like in 5 or 10 years. I would like to know, what are your perceptions on that direction? How AR will evolve, or even VR?
I think that you have to look back in history and see sort of where AR and VR tech has evolved from. VR has been around for 40 years, right? But it only really expanded when smartphone displays were cheap enough to be used, and when Lucky Palmer was able to actually, use tracking and refresh rates to make it, feasible. AR tech is only, starting to get momentum in glasses when they started to get waveguide tech and retroreflective panels, and when they're starting to make, the optics work. There's these catalysts that will happen inside of technology that will make technology expand, right? So, for the smartphone, it was the touchscreen. When the touchscreen came out, it made the iPhone viable. And, then 3G and 4G and 5G came, subsequently from that. But there was a catalyst in time that made that thing actually work. And for AR and VR, it's the same sort of idea. You have to think about batteries. You have to think about the displays. You have to think about the optics. You have to think about the weight. You have to think about the connectivity. You have to think about the form factor. These are all different things that will make a very good product. If you think about an iPhone, the first iPhone, and like my iPhone 12, right? It's still a screen, a touch screen, an antenna, a microphone, and a speaker, right? Fundamentally, there isn't really much different. It has a camera, but it's just gotten that much better. But the initial things had to be good to start with. It had to have a decent camera. It had to have a decent display. It had to have a decent battery. It had to have decent Wi-Fi, right? All those things were the catalyst that actually started that revolution. And where we are with AR and VR tech is that some of it has hit that catalyst point. Like in VR, we have the Oculus Quest 2 that has all those factors that make it work. And we can see what, the next 5 years of headsets are going to look like. They're going to get incrementally better. They're going to get lighter. They're going to get faster. They're going to get cheaper. The displays are going to get better, and so on and so on and so on. In AR tech, we're starting to see a bit of that now start to surface with Magic Leap's second display, HoloLens, Nreal. There's like a whole bunch of different manufacturers that are all kind of, starting to break these things down. But the catalyst is still necessary for there to actually be an expansion in AR. I mean, AR is going to be 10 or 20 times bigger than VR because it's going to replace a smartphone, right? And we can see that. It's inevitable. But you have to think about it like you have to make a form factor that's similar to glasses. So it has to be super light. The battery has to give you the all-day battery life, right? You can't just put on your glasses for 2 hours and expect it to replace your smartphone. It has to give you 10 to 12 hours.
Needs time.
Connectivity has to be there. Yeah, it's all going to take time, but it's clear you can see that, right? Like if you're going to ask the question, is the world going to make better batteries? Of course they are. It's inevitable. Will the world make better displays? Of course, it's inevitable. The catalyst is there. The foundations of the technology are there. It's going to take a little bit more time for it to actually get mass market because there's like 4 companies out there trying to do this, but there's like 100 companies making smartphones in China, right? So, when you think about the scale, it's completely different. The acceleration of the smartphone was so much faster because it was so much cheaper and easier to build. This is a fundamentally challenging problem, right? We're trying to stop light in front of your eye at a high resolution, so that you actually believe that that object is there. The brain's not stupid. You need to really trick it well. So it's going to take some time to get there. I think that you'll see that there'll be a VR headset that has pass-through cameras that will come first before a transparent display as glasses. But you can clearly see that just the roadmap and how far we've come in the last 5 years will depict what we'll see for the next 5 to 10 years. So I think that we'll have a pass-through, really precise, good sub $1,000 VR headset in the next 5 years for sure. And we'll have a pair of glasses on our face that will maybe give us half a day's, battery life and form factor that makes sense in about 7 to 10 years. That's where I see it's going to make sense. There's a lot of challenges, in the manufacturing and in software side that's going to be there. But these are all problems that can be solved. They just need time. So, those are my sort of predictions in sort of where we're going to see the tech make sense.
Yeah, actually, we are on the same page there. But I think that at least 10 years to start using glasses. But anyway, let's be more positive. Let's assume it's 5 years. So to finalize our call, I want you to advise us, like what different kind of sources do you recommend to learn more about XR, AR, VR technologies?
Got it. So I think that the first place to go is to build almost like a notes page somewhere, whatever you're most comfortable in, whether it's Notion or notes on your Mac or, a Word document or text, whatever. Just, constantly search for content that's public and that's out there. Go to the app stores and see the AR, based applications, the top 10, and download all of them and make notes about them, right? Like that's the best way to actually research what's good, is that you should take some time out and you should, critique what's out there, and you should understand what has been done. Go on social experiences, go to the marketing websites and see, which campaigns did really well and are AR based, and start to try them and test them and see your own comments on the things, because there will be things that you like and things that you don't like, things that work and don't work. And if you just read the case study or the marketing page, then you're probably going to be lied to because nobody really tells you all the bad things. Try it yourself. So first, take what's there in the public and sort of critique it and, and make notes about it as from a user experience. In terms of development, you need to, I find the best medium is to watch the presentations and talks on YouTube from all the different shows, right? So F8 from Facebook has got its own, series of videos that talk about how do you spark AR. Snapchat has its own videos as well from the creators platform. So you don't necessarily need to become a creator, but you should understand what tools the creators have, because if you're going to try to get a creator to develop something for you, whether it's a company or an individual, you have to also understand the limitations. You don't need to build a product. but you need to understand the limitations and you need to be creative around those limitations. So having a good conversation with someone in your team, internally or externally, doesn't matter, is about you being educated first. You have to upskill and educate yourself. Now, there's no book or magic formula on how to be good at AR. It's about trialing and error. You have to play with things, you have to break things, you have to see what's good, you have to see what's bad, and you have to document that all along the way. Making notes about good experiences will help you find ideas and concepts for your project from what you've already experienced. Don't try to jump into an AR project for 3 months if you've never tried AR on a phone or a tablet or on a web browser before. That's suicide. Don't do that. Rather take a week or two out and start to critique things that exist and see what was good and what was bad, and see good companies and bad companies, where they executed well and where they executed badly. And you're never really going to see the data, right? No one's going to show you how many views something got or how many downloads something got. All those things are behind, all these kinds of walls that you won't get access to. But if you don't like the user experience, how will you ever get anyone else to like it as well? I always say to myself, how could I ever sell something that I didn't want to buy? If I don't want to buy that app, or if I don't want to do that experience, how am I going to expect anyone else to do something similar, right? And how am I even going to understand what's possible or not? So that's my advice, is that you must just get immersed in it. You must play, you must experience, you must break things. You must load your phone full of different apps, try all different kinds of web AR browsers, web-based AR experiences on browsers, and see, what works, what doesn't work. And also, something that I would suggest is that if you have an old phone, in your drawer somewhere, a spare old phone, boot it up, turn it on, and install that same app, and see what the app looks like on your iPhone 12, your iPhone 10, or maybe even your iPhone 8, and see, because somebody that you're trying to sell to will have one of those devices, right? And if the experience is bad on one of those devices, you should know what they are. And it's about constantly just trialing and experimenting and breaking and seeing what sticks. Right? This whole sort of space is still very much in its infancy. It's very, very powerful, and it's incredibly useful. And there's so many really good use cases out there. But if you don't know what they are, you won't be able to build one yourself.
True. Steve, thank you so much for this interesting talk. Very interesting.
You're welcome.
Points in augmented reality and VR as well. I hope that we will have a talk maybe in a month or two, whenever you already will present your application in much more deeper way. So thank you once again, and we will meet on our meetups on Startup Wise, guys.
You're welcome, Annie. I hope you have a lovely day. Yeah.
Thank you, dear.